Barkley, and welcome to today's show. As a healthy and fit mom over 40 who started having babies after turning 40, I'm occasionally asked about fertility, and I'm sure I'm not asked more about it because it's kind of a taboo thing to ask, right? Like everyone wants to know, and it's also kind of just inappropriate to ask someone that question, but we'll talk more about that in a bit. But many years ago, I attended a natural health mastermind in San Diego and was lucky enough to be seated next to a gentleman named Marc Sklar. We hit it off instantly. You know how sometimes you sit next to someone at one of these events, you're like, oh God. And sometimes you sit next to someone, you're like, woohoo, all right. And that's exactly how I felt about Marc. We hit it off right away, the way you sometimes do with people. He's fun and he's easygoing, and we had a great time getting to know each other. But what do you know? Mr. Marc Sklar is kind of a YouTube sensation. He's like a star on natural fertility. He has 248,000 subscribers on his YouTube channel, all dedicated to natural fertility. That is a lot and like amazing and impressive. So anyway, I want to welcome Marc to the show and dive right in. Marc, tell us, if you don't mind, how did you become an expert in fertility?
Well, first and foremost, I should say thank you for having me. It's so nice to chat. It's been a while, and so nice to be able to see you and be here with you and talk about this topic that I love. So thanks for having me.
Totally my pleasure.
In terms of, getting into this topic and getting into fertility, I often joke that it kind of happened by accident.
Yeah.
It wasn't really something that I sought out saying like, oh, I want to specialize in fertility or reproductive health. It was more about, for me, that I knew that I wanted to work with hormones and that I wanted to work with women primarily, although I do work with a lot of men as well now. But
why hormones in women? Like most men want to run from hormones in women. You're like, let's make this my life's calling.
I don't know what it was other than growing up. I've always been good friends with a lot of women and was always someone that they leaned on for support when they needed some in some capacity. And so it was just something that I naturally gravitated to. And then when I was in school, I think the main thing, not that I know the main thing that kind of flipped the switch for me was really one defining moment was the first person that I helped with fertility. She had PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, and she was having trouble with her cycles being regular and obviously conceiving. And so within a short period of time, it was about 5 months or so, she was pregnant, and I helped her with that child and then the next. And just that moment when, she found out that she was pregnant and her life, just changed.
Yeah.
Right. To me, it's just miraculous and such a special moment that I knew this was like, there's not a lot of things in healthcare you can often say like, oh, we fixed it.
Yeah.
And so this was one of those moments where we fixed it, and it really changed my life. And as much as I changed her life, obviously she has her family now. And I just realized looking back on it that I saw a picture or a post on Facebook of her daughter who's now in college. And, to me, that's mind blowing of how long that whole thing took and has progressed and so forth. But to me, as much as I helped her, she doesn't recognize how much she changed my life and thousands upon thousands of others because of the work that I do today. I'm not sure if I would have, continued down this road if I didn't have that experience with her. So it was a special time.
I was scrolling through your website last night doing my Marc Sklar homework, and the testimonials, like testimonial after testimonial of all these babies you've helped bring into this world, that you've helped create. And I know that for so many women, it is such like the angst in feeling like a failure or like your body isn't working the way it's supposed to. And then for it to suddenly be working the way that Mother Nature intended, like what an honor.
Yeah, it's truly an honor for me to be part of that process with everyone. And so every time I get those emails or just, someone's making progress, I feel so grateful to be part of it and really happy and thrilled for them to be experiencing those results.
So let's start with step one. Someone's like, oh my gosh, I've been trying to get pregnant for 6 months, let's say, and it's not happening. What should someone do?
Yeah. So, step one for all of us, I think, needs to be a little bit of a reflection internally for ourselves, because for some people, that step one might happen at 6 months. For some, it might happen at a year. For some, it might happen at 1 month, or even before we try, because of our personal history and experience. And so I think the first thing that everyone should recognize is I think we all need to take inventory of our own health and our history, and recognize, and with that self-inventory, be able to critically say to ourselves, is everything functioning the way I want it to? And if not, what are those areas that need more support on our own? And then also recognize, like, for those women who have, or men as well, I've been suffering with X since I was 13 or 15 or 18 or whatever that age is. And now I'm 30 and wanting to have children. That has always been something that's bothered me. I've never really addressed it properly, or because it's, I've had menstrual pain since I was 13, or. Which is not normal, right? Right, not normal, or right. I've had irregular cycles, or whatever it might be. That is a sign. That is something that you should pay attention to recognize, like, oh, I need to be getting support now versus waiting until we've tried for 6 months or a year and it's not working. So I want to put that out there first, because I think all of us can self-reflect and be able to critically think about our own health. And some of it might not even be, hopefully it's as simple as you looking at your own health and saying, like, well, I feel fine overall, but maybe I drink too much, or I don't exercise, or I don't eat well, or whatever it is. And so, well, now's the time, before you're ready to get pregnant, to correct those things, to make the process easier to conceive when I want to, and potentially even more important, to impact the health of the child that I want in the future. So I think all of that is really, really important. But to your specific example of, hey, I've been trying for 6 months, or I've been trying for a year, and where do I go from here, is we need to then start to do more investigation, dig deeper, and get some testing. And so the rule of thumb for everybody is that if you are 35 and younger, then you can give yourself about a year of trying to see if it's working. And if not, then we would seek out additional support. If you're over 35, then it's 6 months. And if you're over 38, then it's 3 months. Now, I don't really, I think those are just guides for us, right? Like, if you inherently know that there's a problem, like I said previously, or you start to get this gut feeling like, and I don't mean I'm just worried and anxious because I'm not getting pregnant. Like, we all know that there's, like, women have this female intuition. There's a gut feeling like something's not right. If you get that, then listen to it. Like, don't ignore it and push it away. Let's pay attention and let's dig deeper. And digging deeper really means we've got to investigate what's going on. So the first part of that, because we're dealing with fertility and cycles, we've got to look at hormones. So we want to do, full hormone panels and testing. I'm here to tell you all that your OB will not do full hormone testing. Really? Okay. Well, because their list of what they believe to be full hormone testing, and I don't want to pigeonhole every OB into this one box. Yeah, no, go ahead. I mean, I'm sure it's true. The majority is, okay. So we can say 90% or 95% or whatever it is. Right. There are exceptions. We'll only do select testing. And for them, that's sufficient. Part of it is because your OB is not a fertility specialist. So they are only looking at things from a certain vantage point. Mm-hmm. And they're going to say, well, we can just do this one test, FSH, follicle stimulating hormone, or we could just do this one test, AMH. And that will tell us what we need to know. And then I'll tell you if I can help you, if you can try naturally. Now we need to do some testing. We need to dive deeper. We need to look at hormones first and foremost. And hormones is really important here, but I want everyone to recognize that the first place you're going to go to have hormone testing, or most people would go, is to your OB.
Right.
And most OBs do not run the full gamut of hormones when I mean complete hormone testing.
Right.
And that's because they're not fertility specialists. And they only look at things from a very narrow lens, or with a very narrow lens. And so they're going to test something like FSH, follicle stimulating hormone, or AMH, anti-Müllerian hormone. And they're going to use that as a guide and indicator to say to you, well, yes, you can try naturally. Don't worry about it. Or maybe I can help you. Here's a pill called Clomid, or you need to go see the IVF doctor.
Right.
Right.
I have to believe, Marc, too, when those are your options, you either go right to a drug or you go right to the fertility specialist. I think every person on earth, if they're having a hard time getting pregnant, their number one fear is, okay, how much is that going to cost? Like, how much is that going to cost? And are there not steps in between? Is there not a way to inject my body with a ton of hormones and have it cost 25 grand?
Right.
Like, how do we do that?
So, cost is certainly something to consider. And I definitely think that anybody who hears the word IVF will think exactly the way you do.
Yeah.
So obviously trying naturally, there isn't that cost, other than there is a cost in trying naturally if we need to make changes, right? Like if we need to start living a more healthy life, and that means changing the things we're using at home and getting on some supplements and maybe, getting a gym membership or something, right? Like all of these things have a cost, but in my mind, that is like insurance. That's health insurance. That's part of your health insurance.
Absolutely.
Right? The other cost, if we're going to pills like Clomid or Letrozole, that cost is relatively low. Those are very low cost medications, which are meant to help you ovulate or ovulate more eggs. And so that would be the first line of treatment from the vantage point of an OBGYN. We also have to remember conventional Western medicine is limited in the type of treatments and therapies that they offer.
Right.
Medication, surgery. I'm using IVF in the surgery category, so we can call it a procedure, right? So that's what they have to offer. And so just because that's what they're offering doesn't mean that that is the only thing available and that those are the only steps you can take. And that's also why I said they're only testing things from a very narrow perspective, because that's all they know. And so we have to take a step back. And that's why I also started this by saying you all can do self-reflection and personal inventory to recognize, where do I need help personally? And what are the things that I need to seek out? And if you're of the opinion that I think most people would feel this way, is that like I would rather conceive naturally, the old-fashioned way, than in a lab, then we have to start in a different place. And that different place is saying to ourselves, well, we want as much information up front as possible. So we want to understand our hormones. We want to understand our menstrual cycle. We want to understand our uterine environment. Like, is my uterus healthy? Are my ovaries healthy? Structurally, are the organs doing okay? And then last, but certainly not least, are the sperm functioning properly?
Right.
Okay. And we have to look at all of those areas critically and with an open mind to then say, okay, now these are our issues. This is what we find. And I'll say, in my world, when I work with patients, fertility support goes well beyond those areas, but those are the first areas that we need to look at.
Love it.
And then from there, we need to say, well, okay, these are the areas that are impacted and that need support. And then how am I going to get that support? What am I going to do? And who am I going to lean on to get me that support? And, for everybody, depending on your age and how long you've been trying and so forth, there's, we're all open to different things, different options, and different paths.
So you talked a little bit about fitness, about working out and exercise. And I'm assuming there's that sweet spot between diet and exercise. And can you talk a little bit more about what that sweet spot is? Is it super fit? Is it let's talk about the ratio of eating clean versus not eating clean. I mean, you and I, this is, spoiler alert, Marc and I are both on page with having a whole food diet, right? With organic food, grass-fed, pastured, all those things.
100%.
But also, is there room for 10 to 20% of real life? Wine, chocolate, an occasional basket of French fries. You know what I mean? Like, right. What is the balance? Help us understand the balance a little bit more.
Yeah. So I'm a person of moderation, and I believe that everything has balance and we can have balance. I think that balance and what we're looking for is going to vary for each one of us as individuals, right? One thing we should all take into perspective is that, and I think hopefully most people have learned this in other aspects of their lives, is what is good for one person doesn't mean that it's good for everybody. What is bad for one person doesn't mean it's bad for everybody. And we have to find what is appropriate for us as an individual and unique person with our health issues, our hormonal issues, whatever those concerns are. Right. And so coming back to the exercise piece first is, we should all be exercising. I think we can all agree, and this is true for everybody, is that doing nothing when it comes to exercise is not good for anyone, whether you, for any health conditions, fertility or beyond, right? So we want to move, we want to exercise, and we want to do that somewhat regularly for all of us. Okay. But the exercise piece, it can look different for each one of us. So a woman, and I only come up with this example because I mentioned PCOS earlier with that first woman that I helped. But PCOS is a condition that with women who have it, and it's actually the most common endocrine disorder for women. PCOS is where women are going to produce a higher amount, or typically a higher amount of androgens or testosterone. So to take a woman who has PCOS and have them exercise a lot and use a lot of weights is not a good idea.
Interesting.
Right. But to have somebody who might be overweight and doesn't have PCOS and needs to lose some weight, then maybe doing a little bit more in that situation will be appropriate for that person. Right. And so it's about finding that sweet spot. The general guideline I give to all women is we want around 3 to 4 hours of exercise a week.
Yeah.
And I always start with cardio more so. And body weight. And then from there, depending on the circumstances and what we need to achieve, then we can up the game, modify it, change it for each individual person. Someone who is doing CrossFit for 2 hours a day, 6 to 7 days a week, it's probably not ideal for fertility.
Right.
It doesn't mean you don't feel good doing it. It just is probably not ideal for fertility. And I think we all also, don't think of exercise as stress on the body. We think of it as a positive thing. So we wouldn't put that negative term of stress on exercise, but anything that is overdone, whether it's exercise or something else, can be a stressor on the body. And we don't want to add more stress, in turn, also adding more inflammation. And so looking at those labs, looking at hormones and looking at inflammatory markers and understanding someone's unique situation will also help to dictate what we think is okay for them. I have a great example. I have a woman who I just started working with, and she has PCOS, but she was told by a friend of hers who is a personal trainer. It's like, let's get you in the gym and let's start exercising and doing all these things. And she comes in and it's like, I don't understand why all of a sudden this is happening to me and this is happening and I don't have a cycle and all these things. And I said, well, what did you start doing recently in the last 2 or 3 months? She's like, I started exercising and I'm in the gym 2 hours a day.
2 hours.
Wow. Yeah. And I was like, well, that's the problem.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Right? Like, this is not okay in this situation.
Yeah.
And that needs to be tempered back quite a bit. And so
my guess would be
where we need the balance.
Yeah, my guess would be being overly lean greatly limiting your calories. Like a baby, and growing a baby needs a little bit of body fat, right?
Yeah.
And some calories. And then, the opposite of that would be a little heavy and a little bit sedentary. Like that's not good either.
Right.
Like the body needs blood flow and oxygen. So finding that sweet spot in terms of exercise is always so critical.
Yeah, and that BMI is going to be important for that, right? Because if you're really thin and really lean, you're very low BMI. We've got to pick that up, and vice versa, right?
Yeah.
If it's too
what
high,
about like gut health, right? We hear a lot and we talk a lot about gut health and digestion. Do you think that plays a big role in one's fertility as well?
Yeah, and I think this ties into your previous question about diet. So first, I'll say that to me, gut health is one of the most important things that I do with couples who are trying to conceive. And when I mentioned before, these are the 4 things, I think I listed 4 different areas that we need to check out initially. Yep. Right. I did not mention gut health. Without a healthy digestive system, without proper gut function, we are going to have a hard time conceiving. And I've noticed this repeatedly for the last 20 years. Right. So much so that everybody who joins my program starts with a detox.
Wow. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. And the detox, it sounds more intense than it is, but it's really primarily cleaning up your diet.
That's awesome.
So we're going to clean up your diet first and foremost. So yes, I do think that we can have some flexibility in our diet, in our whole food, really healthy, organic diet that we live and eat normally. But initially, I ask everyone to be 100% because I want to see that shift, right? I want to see that big shift that most people will get when they do that. And so that's what I call my diet in my program, my detox in my program for everybody is we're going to clean up that diet. We're going to get rid of all the processed sugars. We're going to get rid of all the junk food. You're going to start cooking for yourself. You're going to buy whole foods. You're going to eat organic, grass-fed, pasture-raised, wild, everything that we should be doing on a normal basis. That's what we're leaning towards initially.
Awesome.
And then from there, once we get you in a good place, then, and that doesn't have to take a long time, then we start to give back that flexibility, 90-10, 80-20. I don't like to go below 70-30, but essentially like you're giving yourself some flexibility. Flexibility doesn't mean that you can go hog wild on a meal. It means that, like you said, I'm going to go out and have a good meal and be health conscious about what I'm going to choose to eat, but I'm going to have that potentially that glass of wine, or I'm going to have that basket of fries or whatever it is that I'm being real.
Yeah. We're all humans.
Right. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with those things in moderation.
Sure.
Right. And so, gut health is really, really important for me. And so many individuals just really, it's a hard thing to change. There's a lot of emotional, component to eating and what we like to eat. And even though we might know that I should change something, it's not the easiest thing to do.
Right.
And so when I'm there to hold them accountable and others are there to hold them accountable, it's much easier to do. And if we can do that for a good 3 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks, we've made change. You've started to create new habits and you could move forward with something else. And that is huge. That will have huge impacts on your fertility. So gut health is really, really important. So much so that I'm often doing stool testing for couples, looking deeper to see, is there something really impacting your digestive health that is not letting you get beyond where you're at right now, even with all the dietary changes that you've made?
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about, I know couples who are super healthy and when I say super healthy, I mean in a very good balanced way. They live fit and active lifestyles. They're, eating 80% clean, and, overall healthy, all that stuff. And they have something called unexplained fertility. And I know people who have lived with unexplained fertility for a long time, some of whom have gone down the route of IVF and had that not work. Or is it IUI, right? Where they...
Either one.
Yeah, either one. And I know, in fact, I know 3 couples specifically in this category for whom they have not had success. And what happens after that?
Yeah. So, you mentioned a term that is probably my least favorite term in the fertility world, which is unexplained.
I can imagine. It's frustrating for me and I don't have that issue.
Right. Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't. So just because something's unexplained doesn't mean that it doesn't have a cause.
Yeah.
Okay. Everything in this world has a cause. We can find a reason for something that causes the reaction that we're seeing. And so just because you've been given that term, unexplained or idiopathic, doesn't mean that, oh, there's no reason why I'm not getting pregnant. It means they can't figure out why you're not getting pregnant. It doesn't mean that there's not a cause. And so the things that I think are really important to recognize here is that, yes, when you are given that diagnosis, the next statement that is going to be said is your only option is IUI or IVF.
Right.
I think that your next option is to find someone who can actually help you figure out why. Yeah. And so we just talked about digestive issues and gut health, right? When I dig deeper, I often find that is the underlying cause.
Wow.
When I dig deeper, I often find that stress is the underlying cause.
Yeah, boy, for sure.
Or thyroid issues or other things that have not been looked at. So when you do that with your OB, you go do you ask the question, maybe they do a little bit of testing. Then the next step is to send you to the IVF clinic or the fertility doctor, which is the same thing. Right. Okay. And when you go there, they are running some additional tests on you. Those tests are very narrow as well, because the only thing they want to know with those tests is, are you or are you not a good candidate for IVF with your own eggs and your own sperm?
You know, the other thing I've heard people talk about,
testing is about.
The other thing I've heard people say as a preventative as to why they can't get pregnant is because they have a tilted uterus.
Yeah.
Is that so?
So this comes back to what you need to look at. They're looking at things from a very narrow perspective and saying to themselves, well, if you fall into our category, we're going to tell you, wait, everything looks fine. We're just going to do IVF because that's what we do.
Right.
Right. But it's because those other things aren't important to them. And I'm not saying they're not important. They're not important to that doctor.
Sure.
And so because we live in a medical system that is very specialized, which is good, right? Like that's great.
It can be.
But it narrows their lens. So they've got blinders on and they don't look at anything else.
Yeah.
And so that's where working or looking for someone who has a different and a more broad perspective on things will get you more answers. So looking at your uterus and your cervix, is it tilted? Oh, maybe this could be impacting. So we have to change maybe the position you have intercourse in. They might do one thyroid lab and say you look fine. But if we do the other 9 and find that you're not fine, that is very often a reason why. So we really need to look at all the different systems. And on top of that, I'm going to come back to men here because this is often ignored. You go down this road, your partner says, no, I'm fine. I don't want to give a sperm sample. I'm good. How does he really know that? He doesn't. But who wants to give a sample? Nobody. Who wants to aim into a cup? Nobody. But nobody.
What percentage? I mean, if you're able to share, could how many?
50%.
50%. It's like it's the male's issue.
50% of all fertility issues are male related.
Wow.
We cannot ignore it. Sperm are really, really sensitive. And since the 1960s, the decline in sperm quality parameters has decreased considerably every 10 years. And now it's speeding up to almost every 5 and less years.
I can imagine what you would attribute it to, but what do you attribute it to?
Attribute it to all the chemicals and toxins that we are exposed to all the sedentary lifestyle that we're exposed to all the, electromagnetic fields that we're exposed to. All of these things are big variables as to why. And sperm are sensitive. Like they're really, really sensitive. They decrease very quickly, but on the positive, with the right support, they can increase relatively quickly.
Awesome.
Yeah.
When Darren and I were trying to get pregnant, I was like, get that laptop off of your damn lap. We don't need anything to compromise what's going on here. Get the laptop out of your lap. This is wild. Yeah.
100%. I'm glad you did that. That's really important. but those are the reasons why. So when your partner says, I'm fine, your answer should be prove it.
I love it. I love
that should be your answer. Prove it to me. Take a test and prove it to me.
Yeah. And that'll only bolster their confidence as well.
Yeah,
for sure. Exactly. Awesome. Okay. So the man's been looked at, the woman's been looked at. And because in some of your testimonials, you have people who've had, IVF and miscarriages, and lo and behold, they're pregnant. And do you think it's simply a matter of having looked at those underlying issues?
Yeah, I do think the underlying issues are huge for recurrent pregnancy loss or miscarriage. The underlying issues are really, really important because, and when you test for them, like how many is too many, right? When you're have a couple who's miscarriages, when you have a couple who have a loss and they're told, well, you've only had one, we can't do any testing for you. It's like, does that really sit well? Now, and I understand miscarriage is very common. And I understand that, yes, we might not need to do any additional testing because they've only had one.
Right.
But I'm sure we could do something else in that time frame before they have another. I mean, it used to be before anyone was able to do any testing, it was 3 losses before anyone would do testing.
Wow, how sad.
Who wants to go through 3 losses? At least we've got it to 2 now. Yeah. So, and then it's a matter of, am I speaking to the right person who's going to run the right tests to investigate, to understand what's really going on? Because that's not a specialty for most people.
Right.
And so when they start to, dig deeper, they run just a few tests and say, everything's fine.
Right.
So really understanding why. And that's why, to me, getting back to this root issue of trying to understand why we're having these issues is so important, because it really changes everything.
Yeah.
So many women think that if I'm not getting pregnant, it's always because of egg quality.
Right.
And all the books are around egg quality. All the information you read is around egg quality. And I'm not here to say that egg quality is not important or it's not a variable.
Yeah.
But every fertility issue is not poor egg quality.
Yeah.
So the natural progression that happens to someone, and they're reading. Oh, well, they said this is good. And the next thing you know, they come in with a bag of supplements. And when you ask why, well, I read it was good for egg quality. Look,
right.
Do you know that egg quality is an issue? No, I don't.
I'll share just some personal stories. Mark and I have we've had our own talk about my fertility over the years. And just to share when I was 38 or so, or 39, my husband and I said, okay, we'll give it a go. We were traveling through Croatia. It was our first time that we thought we would give it a go. And oh gosh, I would say we were maybe 3 or 4 days in on this European holiday. And I got pregnant that one time. It was one time. And I can assure you that I did absolutely nothing that I would have done if I were like really trying, right. Just TMI. I was on top. I immediately went to the bathroom, just carried on the next 2 weeks. We ate and drank our way through Europe. I had all the coffee. I had all the wine. I had all the everything. And then one day we were on a bike ride through Italy. We were on this island. And Darren's like, let's get all the way to the top. And I was like, nope, I am not going to go all the way to the top. I'm so tired. All I want to do is go lay down. And then I came home from my trip. I was getting my hair done. And my hairstylist looked at me and she's like, you're pregnant, lady. You are pregnant. And I was like, no way. It was just this, no. And sure enough, I was pregnant and I was so excited. I knew instantly that was my baby. I told everyone. And then about 4 weeks later, I started bleeding and I lost that baby. And it was one of the most devastating things that ever happened to me. It was like a full-blown labor. Like I labored all night long with my body reading that. And it was emotionally so traumatizing. And it took me a few weeks to feel like myself again. And a few weeks later, I said to myself, I want to undo this. And so to me, undoing it was getting pregnant instantly. And I didn't want to put that stress on Darren. So I just privately started trying, without really discussing it with him. I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, let's just do it. And then about 4 months later, nothing had happened. And I started feeling the real panic. And I started, downloading fertility apps and I'm tracking everything like a maniac and feeling real stress about it. And then finally I said to him, hey, I really want to actively try. And he got on board. So we tried for another 3-4 months. Nothing happened. So I reached out to Marc. Marc just ran an initial test. He actually started with Darren. He was fine. Darren was very proud of himself because he has the worst diet of all human time. And I'm constantly on him about it. We're talking sugar cereals, the whole shebang. And I'm like, it's you. It's your fault. When his test results came back, Marc, he texted me. We were like deep into Game of Thrones at the time. He texted me like Dragon Slayer, emojis, like he's all fine. So we're now 7-8 months into, no baby. And I was really feeling the weight of it. And, going back to what you said in terms of like looking internally and really doing that hard introspection, like, what is it? What is it that's holding me back? What is it? And I happen to be really good at being introspective. And I can tell you, for me, I felt grave responsibility for the loss of the first one. I was like, I had no idea. I was eating and drinking. I mean, we were having wine every night and whatever. And then also it was very comforting to start to hear other people talk about their miscarriages because it is so normal and it is so common. And trying for who is now Annecy and trying for Annecy. And we worked for that girl. I had to look at what was really holding me back. And at the time I was going through major emotional stress. My family, like my family relationships were completely falling apart. They were having some massive trauma. I was deeply involved in it and wrapped up in it. And I was letting it just control me, consume me. And at the same time, I'm also wildly tracking, my cycle and the right time and all of that. And of course it wasn't happening. And one day I said to myself, I have to let all this go. I have to let all of it go. And so like with love and with peace, I release all of this. I release all of this emotional stress that's going on in my life. I release all of this emotional stress about trying to get pregnant. I deleted the apps. I started having my nightly glass of wine. I just took a breath. I was pregnant the next month, the very next month. And let me tell you what, to anyone listening who's discouraged, I was 41 years old. The minute I said goodbye to the stress, the apps, all of that, it happened. And then 2 years later, we said, well, maybe we'll give it a try for another one. I sneezed. I mean, I'm pretty sure Darren and I shook hands and I got pregnant with someone.
You got pregnant, right.
We shook hands. I was 43 years old. Excuse me, I have wild allergies. One of the other things I think people don't know is how to actually get pregnant. Like, I think the baseline stuff is, and these are some of the things that I learned that I was surprised by, is you don't actually have sex every single day, right?
No.
You don't actually have sex when you're ovulating. It's too late by then, right?
Often, yes.
It's too late. So let's go back to the basics. How do you get pregnant, Marc?
Yeah. So we have to have intercourse and we have to have it around ovulation. But what I think is important, and even though you're correct, it's sometimes hard to conceive if you have sex on the day you're actually ovulating, is that I still tell them to, because we've got fast swimmers and slow swimmers.
Oh, interesting.
And so we want to give all of them an opportunity. So we want to start before that. So if you have a 28-day cycle, your odds are you're ovulating in the middle of that, which is cycle day 14. And so I count back 5 days from that, and I count forward 2 days, and that's my week.
Oh, okay.
So we're going to go from cycle day 9 to cycle day 16. That's my 7 days. And then you're going to have intercourse every other day.
And why every other day?
Every other day is a easy and safe way to do it on multiple reasons. One is we think that the sperm, we need to have it in there all the time. Sperm can stay alive for 3 to 5 days. So there's no reason to stress about intercourse every day. We also want to give them the body a little break and give it 24 hours to kind of create new fresh sperm. Right. So we like that space in between. That's where that every other day comes in. Yeah. And then we want sperm there early. We want sperm there late, just in case we have a late ovulation or a window shifts a little bit. And so it's just trying to cover that window of time. And that's what I think is easy. It's simple. If you have a regular cycle, you might not even need those apps. And often the only thing you have to ask yourself is, okay, well, I know I need to start on this day, cycle day 9. And the only thing you need to say is, well, it's cycle day. Is this an on day or an off day? Great. On day. Yeah. We have sex. It's an off day.
And P.S. That's fun. It. And if people are like not having fun with this, you're missing out. It's the best part about getting pregnant is trying to get pregnant.
Right. I agree. I mean, I think everyone I understand it becomes a job after a while and it becomes tedious after a while, but we want to still try to make it as fun and as possible and allow you to both connect. And so, that's part of the process. It's not just always about having a baby. It's about having a baby and having fun doing it. Yeah. And so I think that's super, super important. When you mentioned all the stress that you were going through, and when you relaxed with it, how everything changed, it brought up a story that I often tell. And I think this is really important. It kind of ties in a couple of different things together. So I want to share it with everybody. I had a woman, and this has happened on multiple occasions, where she comes in and everything's working properly. And I'm saying, you should be able to get pregnant right now. I don't know why you're not getting pregnant. So walk me through your day. So she walks me through her day. She says, well, I wake up at 5 a.m. so I can go to the gym to exercise before work. I'm like, okay, sounds fine. Yeah. I work for an hour. I come home, I change, I go do my job. I come home, we have dinner, I stay up, with my husband and we watch some TV and whatever. And then I go to bed and I say, well, what time do you go to bed? She goes, somewhere between 11 and 12. I'm like, so let me get this straight. You go to sleep between 11 and 12. You wake up at 5 to go exercise. And she says, yes. I'm like, well, why do you feel the need to exercise? Well, exercise is my way to de-stress. So I need to get it in before. I'm like, that sounds great. But do you know the amount of stress that you're causing on your body? You're only getting 5 to 6 hours of sleep and you're waking up early to exercise and cause maybe a little bit more stress because it's out of the normal pattern of where you should be.
Right.
And now, you're not doing your body good. She said, well, what should I do? I said, well, you can't get up before 7 hours of sleep. Yeah. So you have to decide, are you going to sleep earlier or are you sleeping more? That's it. Right. So you have to have minimum 7 hours of sleep, and then you can exercise at any other time of the day, but you can't wake up early and not get your sleep to exercise. She goes, okay. She got her 7 hours of sleep. She put her exercise someplace else. The next month she was pregnant. And this has happened over and over and over again. So wherever that stress is coming from, you were able to recognize where it was coming from and let it go, which is not always easy. So I think that's wonderful. We need to be able to get rid of that, have a more balanced life, and give our body the opportunity that it needs to do what it knows to do. It's
back to basics.
Yeah.
I think if anything, Marc, like this conversation for people, it's just a very hopeful conversation. And I find that very encouraging because there is always hope. There is always room for introspection. There is always room for tweaking your life and finding a place that will feel more in balance for you. And that really is everything.
Yeah, 100%. My fertility program is called the Hope Fertility Coaching Program because I believe exactly those same things. It's like, we all need a little bit of hope. Everything is negative. Every doctor you're going to speak to is going to tell you can't, you won't, it won't happen for you. I believe you can. I believe that you can reinstill the hope and have the pregnancy and baby that you dream of with the proper process, with the proper plan and the proper mindset to get there.
So how can people find out more about you and this program? Can anybody join this program?
Yeah, I mean, we do have, we do have some restrictions because we want to make sure we can help you. Okay. And that it's going to be the right fit for you, in terms of what you're looking for. So we don't try to mislead anybody when it comes to that. But anyone can apply to join the program, and my team will then have a conversation with you and get a better understanding for your situation, what you're looking for, tell you about the program and see if it's the right fit. Awesome. But yeah, all that information is on my website, marcsklar.com. You mentioned early on in our conversation about my YouTube channel, which is where I put out videos. It is a wealth of information.
Basis. It's so fun. It's a great channel.
Lots of good ones. I'm going to be recording another video today after we finish our stuff. Great. And so that's a really great place, but also, Instagram, Facebook, and all the other places is
and
where
Instagram
they can find
is at Marc Sklar.
The fertility expert.
The fertility expert, of course, as it should be. Everyone, go check out Marc. He is the best. His YouTube channel rocks. His Instagram rocks. Marc, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right, you guys, that's it for us today. I hope you found this episode helpful and inspiring. Please feel free to share it with anyone who you think might need it. If you enjoyed this episode, please let us know by writing a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Reviews help the growth of the show tremendously and also help my guests like Marc Sklar out tremendously. And also don't hesitate to DM me on Instagram with any questions or comments at Andrea Barkley. You can also email me at ab@andreabarkley.com. And what would you give to have a renowned personal trainer in your pocket that you have direct access to without the big time and financial investment? Join the Daily Motivator, my personal text community where I send action items each weekday morning with specific exercise and nutrition homework. I'll be rooting for you and clapping for you before you even get out of bed. If you need some motivation, visit andreabarkley.com/motivate to get started. Thank you so much for being here. Have a healthy and wonderful day.